Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show!
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, that is not nearly as smooth as it normally is on a weekly basis. Our boy Mike got sick within the last half hour of us hopping on here, so we are going to let him puke his brains out and pray that he feels much better in the morning and he doesn't have to do that for too long. So you guys are stuck with us two and no voice of reason among us. So this is gonna be a raw one right here, guys. So I will introduce my partner in crime here today, Mark Prio from the East Coast of New York. What's going on, bud?
What's up, dude? Yeah, certainly scrambling. I found out about 3 minutes ago that Mike wasn't going to be here. So, yeah, we were not prepared for the intro. It's not going to sound as beautiful as usual. But, yeah, welcome to the show. It's an easy one tonight, so it's not really going to be that tough for us to run it without Mike to host it because we got nothing to recap, no marquee as usual, none of that jazz. It's basically just going to be a preview show. There was no MMA to speak of last weekend, so we are just going to give you guys a full card preview of the UFC event coming up this weekend. We're going to hop into the Sphere with Omar before that, and that's really going to be it for this show. So what does Mike usually say here? Give us some follows on social. Throw us a sub on YouTube. That kind of jazz. Keep commenting. We keep getting more comments. I love it. One person kind of tried to call us out. Had to respond to that one because there was a lot of fallacy in there. But, yeah, keep them coming.
Yeah. It's, the comments have been fun. And it's been interesting because we've been getting comments on videos that we posted, like, months ago. So it's been interesting.
Which is a good thing, I guess. Our videos have a lifespan.
Yeah, and they seem to be reaching people that are not within our grasp because they are on the other side of the world. So I think it's dope.
Yeah.
All right. So I think at this point, Mike would be like, if you're still listening, we want to thank you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. Let's see. That was pretty good. I'm trying to figure out the rest of it here.
Then you got to say.
And if you need audio only,
we got you. Audio only on Spotify, Apple, all that jazz. You guys know the drill.
If you guys haven't seen the theme yet, every time one of us doesn't come to the show, we just imitate them ridiculously. So,
yes.
So this is Mike's turn now. There it is.
But for real, hopefully Mike feels better. I'm sure we'll see him back here next week. Seems like he's got one of these probably 24-hour stomach bug type deals. So anyway, with no further ado, let's hop into this thing. As I said, we're just going to go Sphere into previews. That's the whole show this week. So Omar can kick things off for us here with the news of the week.
Boom. All right, so this week we did have some interesting things happen and some interesting revelations of sorts. So let's hop right into it. At the top of my list here, I do have Cub Swanson making an interesting dive into bantamweight. And he posted his new bantamweight physique on his Instagram. Mark was none too pleased. I'm still on the fence about it. It's an interesting one, though, because we get to finally see Cub Swanson maybe do something a little bit different at this point.
I didn't think that necessarily his body looked bad. Just in relation to his head, something looked off. Like his head looked so disproportionate to how small he has gotten his body, which just made me feel concerned.
Smaller guys getting smaller always freaks me out because there's not really much to take away in the first place. But
yeah.
Listen, if it works out for him, you already know. I root for Cub Swanson when I can, so I'm down. Now, the big news has really been about this lightweight title that's coming up. It's gotten a little bit more traction this week because of all the quote-unquote drama that's going on. So Volkanovski reported a couple days ago now at this point that he was going to be the runner-up or the person waiting in the wings in the event that either Islam or Charles can't fight that night for that title. He's going to jump in and he's going to fight for the belt. Beneil Dariush respectfully went on Twitter and was like, what? What do you mean? I'm very confused here. I thought I was next. So there has been no clarification. Volkanovski has now doubled down on the fact that he is the backup. He's like, I'm not playing. What I said was true. This is not a troll. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens. Hopefully we may not even need to get that far. I kind of want to see this Islam versus Charles matchup at this point. Like, Volkanovski is kind of fun to think about, and Dariush definitely deserves the next title shot in my opinion. But like, let's get this one going. Let's not mess this one up.
I feel like sometimes the UFC uses these fill-in things almost as like a throw a bone type thing because they're like fairly sure it's not going to be needed. Like, I feel like this has happened before where it's an instance like this where they get to be like, look, Volk, we know you want to come fight for this lightweight title, and like, look at us, we're willing to make you the backup because like they're crossing their fingers that he's not going to be needed. And then they're going to be like, well, you know, we were going to give it to you, but it didn't work out, so we really need you to fight one more at featherweight. Like, I feel like it's like almost one of those things to try to make it seem like they're listening to him, but they're hoping they don't actually need to do that.
Yeah, and I think they're just hedging their bets. I think there's been a lot of talk about weight missing, especially with Charles's the little thing there, which honestly, I don't even really give him that much shit about. That looked like a lot of bamboozling from all the people that were there. Seemed real weird, that last weigh-in that he had. So they might just be kind of hedging their bets to make sure that thing doesn't fall apart. Because
I'm just saying, picking Volk over Dariush in that spot. Of course they need a backup, but sure. I'm just saying picking Volk lets them kind of check that box a little bit of like, look, Alexander, we hear you. We're doing what you want here. But they don't actually have to do it right now. Sure.
A little patronizing to the champ. How terrible.
Yeah.
All right. Next on the list, Kevin Holland, if you remembered, was talking about how he's retired now, how he's done. Homeboy got paid, and now he's out. Obviously, that wasn't the case. We've reported to that, obviously, since then. What he has revealed since then, though, is he got paid $800,000 show money to win or to fight against Hamzat. So just to step in the cage, he got paid $800,000. So you can see why
real?
I have no reason to believe otherwise.
Holy fuck.
Because I can tell you this, with all the drama that led up to that pay-per-view, that might not have been a bad investment to make sure that everybody kept fighting.
And Li Jing Liang didn't get an extra buck, according to him?
Well,
he said he didn't get one extra dollar.
Li Jing Liang just needs a better manager because Kevin Holland apparently knows what's up.
Justice for Li.
See what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? I'm hoping Homeboy got like a couple stacks under the table because we know that Dana White has done that in the past on multiple occasions. So I'm hoping he helps him out. But I agree, not knowing is frustrating. But if he did get paid $800,000, I could see why he went on the I won the lottery spree. You know what I mean? Every one of us would be calling our jobs like, oh, I quit, bitch. I'm done. I'm out. Yeah. So I get it. All right, next on the list, Shane Burgos, another one who revealed a little bit about his deal in the PFL and about the type of position that he's in now as opposed to what it was in the UFC. It does beg the question as to whether the UFC would have actually matched what they were matching with the PFL. The PFL obviously has given him what seems to be a lot more money. He didn't disclose specifically what his contract is as far as numbers are concerned. But he did talk about how he's getting paid significantly more than what he was getting paid at the UFC. On top of the opportunity to fight for the $1 million, along with commentary opportunity. So he's going to be in the commentary area for PFL as well. So he's got opportunities now, and he's going to be getting paid, additionally for doing commentary as well. So he's got 3 or 2 paychecks, I would imagine, on top of, the lottery bonus thing that the $1 million is when you reach the top. So I think that's a fantastic offer. I don't know if they would have put Shane Burgos on any of the desks right now or commentating. I mean, they've got a pretty good thing going, and I don't think he would have had that leverage, but has it in the PFL, and I'm happy for him, man. Hopefully he does big things and becomes champion, because I think he could do it in the PFL.
I do too, and he gets to start off by fighting a man. I mean, it's not part of the tournament quite yet, but he gets to debut against a man who's half his size, so that's always nice.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when he comes back and Marlon Moraes, he at least looks better than he's looked in the past, because he's looked rough, to say the least. Yeah. Next on the list, a wild call out, which I don't think I saw coming, but I also additionally don't hate too much. Adrian Broner lobbying for a fight with Nate Diaz. For those of you who don't know, Adrian Broner is a boxing champion, a character, to say the least. As far as drama is concerned, that one could be a movie in and of itself, with all the shit they'd probably be flinging back at each other. But it's because I think Adrian Broner's been like retired or hasn't fought as much for a while now, right?
To my knowledge, I would agree.
Yeah, so
I'm not the boxing man.
Yeah, Tommy, let us know in the comments. We know you're listening.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, those kind of fights are like yeah, that makes sense for what Nate Diaz would be doing.
Right? Like every now and again, they throw a weird one out there where you didn't think about it, but then at the same time, you don't hate it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm at with that one. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, he was the champ back in like 2012, 2013, and then 2015, 2016. So it's certainly been a minute since his peak. I don't know if he's been still taking fights at this point. But let's see.
I don't blame him.
He fought in 2021.
With what, a professional fight or exhibition?
No, professional fight. Oh, yeah, dude, he fought Pacquiao in 2019. I actually remember that fight. Yeah, so he's been active recently enough to be fighting Nate Diaz. Why not?
Yeah, I'm about it. It has been announced that UFC is returning to Australia, which, if you guys have not been following the news and following the world and shit, the UFC has not been to Australia since the pandemic hit, because of how locked down Australia and New Zealand, for that matter, have both been since the beginning, all the way through. To be fair, I think they got like 10 infections in that entire country since the pandemic started, so I'm sure that's what they were going for. So like how they did it be damned, but the government there was not playing games. So I'm going to assume that Australia has at this point chilled the hell out. New Zealand has also chilled out. And we are at a point now where the UFC can calmly return to Australia. They will be going back February 12th, 2023 and hosting UFC's 284 event. So if you have money, time, take a trip to Australia. Why not? Let's see here. Oh, the boy Melvin Gillard. Okay, so I don't know if you guys remember, but some time ago we reported that Melvin Gillard had been booked for a fight for BKFC, as he's been in for a little bit now. And the commission actually stopped him from fighting. So they booked the fight, and then the commission said, no, thank you. We're not licensing him. We think that he's not, when they don't license you, they basically think that you're not good enough to protect yourself, or at a point where you can protect yourself effectively, and they just think you're going to do more harm than good. It doesn't happen very often, at least not at this level. So I think it kind of says something about how Melvin Gillard has been looking, and I don't necessarily disagree with the decision. But it has happened a second time. So for a second time, BKFC has tried to book Melvin Gillard in Colorado. Colorado State Athletic Commission, for, again, a second time, has said no. And they did this within 24 hours of the announcement going out. So maybe they need to figure this out before they make these kind of announcements, because it seems like they weren't going to let him do it regardless. But regardless of that, he's not going to be fighting at BKFC anytime soon. It looks like, at least not in Colorado. Who knows if another state's going to allow it? But generally, these commissions,
I think the first one was Florida.
Was
so
it?
It's happened in multiple states. I'm pretty sure the first denial in BKFC was in Florida.
Yeah, it's one of those things that in a lot of situations, the athletic commissions will generally follow the advice of the previous athletic commission that has made the determination, or they'll at least review the situation based on what the previous recommendation was from the other.
From the previous one was Florida. This one's Colorado. So yeah, you
got
multiple states doing it. Not a good look.
if Florida is not allowing you to fight, my guy, like, I mean, you gotta look in the mirror, dog. You gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some fight announcements and some updates. So the big update real quick is that Daniel Rodriguez is actually injured and will not be on this weekend's card with Neil Magny. That whole fight has been scrapped. So we're all getting screwed in that one because that was actually a really good fight.
It was the best fight on the card, in my opinion.
Yeah. So that is that. Let us get to the rest of these fight announcements. Melsik Baghdasaryan is out against his fight with Joanderson Brito, and Brito will now be facing Lucas Alexander at UFC Vegas 62 on October 15th, obviously this weekend, with Hilton Almeida versus Shamil Abdurrahimov out of UFC 280. Almeida will now face Maxim Grishin at UFC Vegas 64 on November 5th. RIP Maxim Grishin. Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez for Frankie Edgar's retirement fight has been added to UFC's 281 on November 12th in Madison Square Garden. Great venue for Frankie Edgar to go out on. Not my favorite choice of fighter. There seems like there's opportunity for some real legendary shit to go down there, but I think that it sounds like to me the venue was probably more important than the opponent at this point.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, here's what I keep thinking about: if he wins that fight, and then people are like, "Hey, Frankie, do you want to fight Tom Cruise?" Is he really going to walk?
No?
Like, I don't know. We will see.
Yeah, he should have fought Tom Cruise now.
I know. My guess is Dom is not ready. I'm sure they fucking looked into it.
Yeah.
How do you not?
Let's go to Rafael Dos Anjos versus the banger Brian Barberina has been added to the card. I am definitely going to UFC's Orlando card on December 3rd. Along with that fight, Phil Rowe versus Nico Price has also been added to the Orlando card, and Tai Tuivasa versus Sergey Pavlovich has also been added to the Orlando card. These tickets go on sale. I think they went on sale today for like the super pre-sale ones, and then the other ones go on sale starting tomorrow, October 13th, for those of you listening today. But they go on sale, and I will be buying them in the morning because I have to.
Yeah, dude, that Orlando card is
It's nasty.
Like I can't
nasty.
believe how good the card is.
I can't even tell you how excited I am for that fucking card.
Yeah, there's 10 fights on that card that could have been the co-main event of this card that we're about to preview.
Yep. Yeah, I think it has to do with Dana White's love for DeSantis. I think it's.
I think
that's what it is. Oh, they're butt buddies, bro. Yeah. They're about it. All right, the Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev. We talked about it last week quickly about how it was in the works. It wasn't official. It is now official, so we can put that one officially in the books for UFC 282 on December 10th. Along with that fight, Alexander Gustafsson, I don't know, no one can confirm to me whether he was actually retired or not, but everybody I talked to is like, I thought he was retired, but like I'm not really sure. So
I don't think he ever said anything.
Did we all just retire him ourselves? Is that what happened?
I think we kind of said we don't need to see him anymore.
Maybe
and we
that's
just
what happened.
Because I don't remember hearing a word from him.
Yeah.
He just took his little beating from Krylov and went quiet, and now here he is.
We must have all retired him ourselves because I could have swore that dude was done. Anyway,
I don't hate this because it's like OSP is not like a. I mean, he can hurt you. Don't get me wrong. He can certainly tap you, the whole deal. But I wouldn't say he's like a
knockout
killer.
Artist. Yeah.
So it's like if Gus loses this one, I feel like we've hit the point where it's very safe to say like, okay, there's no reason to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. My whole thing is how he looks, right? Like even if he loses the fight, I'm not necessarily against it. But if he looks like trash, like he hasn't looked great in his last couple fights. And if he looks the same way, like he's getting outclassed, then yes, let's call it a day. But if it's at least competitive and he's giving OSP work, then I'm not super mad at it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Next on the list, Jeff Neal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov has been added to UFC's January 14th event For those of you who may not be paying attention, Shavkat Rakhmonov is another up-and-comer. He's basically another Hamzat for all intents and purposes. And so this fight against Jeff Neal is a big, big one. And it's a big one, a big step up in the rankings for Rakhmonov. And it'll actually show us whether he's super legit or not. Because so far he's looked great. But now we get to test him against somebody with some real meat behind their name. So
honestly, props to Jeff Neal because
for taking it, yeah.
Okay. And he probably was thinking he was going to get a big fight. And instead he's taking the most dangerous fight he can take against someone who is ranked under him.
I agree. I am surprised he took it. But maybe it's an opportunity for him to be like, I feel like he said before, like at the end of the day, he's going to have to fight everybody anyway. So like it is whatever.
Yeah.
But I know that if you start waiting around for title shots, I feel like that's just the worst decision, man. Because things change
he's not at
so
title
often.
shots just yet, but
no.
yeah.
But I'm just glad he wasn't in one of these spots where he's like, I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait for you.
To me, and maybe his manager's saying this to him. To me, it's the right way to play it because the top of welterweight is a freaking mess. You got to wait for a rematch between Usman and Leon. Then what if Usman wins? Is there gonna be a third one? You got whatever Chimaev's doing. Colby's hanging out, not taking fights. I mean, it's the whole thing is a mess up there. So he still hasn't even passed like Gilbert Burns necessarily. So there's no reason to not take fights. Like, keep looking as good as you can look while all this shit plays out.
Especially the way he looked in his last fight, because that was probably the best Jeff Neal I think I've seen in a minute.
Bilal, I forgot. So. Yeah, welterweights, there's a lot.
Next on the list, Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker has been added to UFC's 283 event on January 21st. And along with that, we were having suspicions that Lyoto Machida versus Shogun Rua would be the final matchup for these guys in their career. That didn't happen. So instead, we get Shogun Rua versus Ihor Potieria.
That shit makes me nuts. Like, maybe they're just trying to get Shogun to go out with a win in Brazil, and they want that to be the final image, in which case, like, all right, I get it. But, like, we couldn't do anyone that meant more than Ihor Potieria, who I believe is 0-1 in the UFC. Like, we couldn't do any better than that. And I loved that Lyoto idea. Like, if Lyoto's ready to retire, that's what he was saying. He said, I want one more fight. I'd love for it to be in the UFC, which makes a lot of sense to me. The guy's a former fucking champion, had a hell of a UFC career. For them to both retire on the same night in Brazil, obviously one has to win, one has to lose, but they hug in the cage, the crowd showering them with cheers. Like, I don't know how the UFC passes on that. I really don't. So I was hyped when I heard that. But
especially with their history. Lyoto having been champion, Shogun having knocked him out to get the championship back. Like, it seemed to me like a no-brainer.
Trilogy fight.
Correct, sir.
Correct. Yeah, that's a big missed opportunity in my opinion. I would have been very into that.
I think you and everybody else, man. I think they really dropped the ball on that one personally. But
yeah.
Last on the list, I thought was very interesting that right off the bat, we talked about Aspen Ladd getting her PFL contract and debuting in 2023, I thought it said 2023, but turns out she will be debuting a bit sooner. Aspen Ladd versus Julia Budd has been booked for November 25th in New York. That's a great test right off the bat. Same.
145?
145.
45, okay.
45, yep.
Yeah, because I know Bud had gone. Bud is usually a 45er.
She went up,
gone
right?
up to 55 for a little bit in PFL, whereas Ladd is now going to go up to 45. But
yeah,
I wonder. Now I'm curious how dissimilar they are in size because I don't feel like they're so dissimilar in my brain. Bud is 5'8". I feel like Ladd is like the same exact thing. Oh no, she's not. She's 5'6". But still, only 2 inches.
I feel like Aspen Ladd is kind of tiny.
Really? I don't know. I thought she was taller. Julia Budd's 70-inch reach.
Oh, 5'6".
Aspen Ladd, 66. So yeah, Julia Budd is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage. So there'll be some size at play there, but we will see.
I'm just hoping Aspen Ladd comes back because whatever
I mean,
is
she'll make
happening
weight at
over
145. You would hope.
there. I mean, didn't she miss weight at 145 too?
Yeah, you're right. I think she did. I think you're right.
Yeah.
She fought, but I think she missed it. Yeah.
So, I don't know, man. That girl needs to get her shit together. I don't know what's happening over there, but
Yeah.
you gotta get it together. All right, that's all we have for the Sphere for this week. Let's move right along into the prelims of this weekend's fights. UFC Fight Night, Grasso versus Araujo. And we will kick it off with Mike Jackson versus Pete Rodriguez. Mike Jackson with a 1-1 record, and Pete Rodriguez with a 4-1 record.
Don't forget Mike's other one. He's 1-1, 0-1.
Oh my God, it's no contest.
Yeah, that's what makes his record so special. You gotta love it.
Against
3
our boy.
fights, 3 different results.
Against our boy.
Yeah. How you want me to start it off?
Yeah, you know what? Let's. I'll announce him, and then you could actually give us the odds right after that. I think that would be the best.
All right. And then go into my previews, and I'll always be first. You'll always be second. Sorry,
Yep.
people. We're winging this thing without Mike here.
That's right, baby. You're hearing us pissing the wind right now.
Yeah. All right. So, Pete, I got these odds a couple days ago, honestly, when I had a minute. So things could have changed somewhat. But Pete Rodriguez is minus 675. Mike Jackson is plus 475. Which, if you know the
Jesus.
history of Mike Jackson in the UFC, shouldn't be terribly shocking. I'm not sure he's quite UFC caliber. This is probably his last time in the UFC, assuming it is a loss. But just to remind people who may not know, so Mike Jackson debuted in the UFC with a loss to Mickey Gall back when Mickey Gall was Raw as well. Had a win over CM Punk that then got overturned. Disappeared for like 4 years. And then came back to pick up a DQ victory over Dean Barry, who kept hitting him with illegal shots, and eventually they just DQ'd Dean Barry. So that's his professional resume. It's an odd one. But he gets matched with Pete Rodriguez, who's only 4-1 in his short career as well. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He got smoked by Jack Della Maddalena in his debut. But despite that, he is, as I said, almost a 7-1 favorite here. And I'm not going to get crazy. I am going to pick Pete Rodriguez. But Mike Jackson at plus 500 is not bad, because Pete Rodriguez is far from a proven thing. And yeah, Mike Jackson hasn't looked great, but it's not like he gets washed in there. Like, he hung with Dean Barry in that last fight until the fouls started happening and it turned into a mess. So 5-1 is not bad underdog odds, but I do think Pete is likely the better fighter. He packs big power, and I just keep thinking of the way Mike fights. He kind of keeps his hands down and almost is there to be hit. Like, he almost puts his head out there. And I just think things might end quickly because of that. I think he is kind of playing with fire. And I'm going to say an aggressive Pete Rodriguez gets Mike Jackson out of there in 1 knockout.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you to any extent. I don't think Mike Rodriguez is, or Mike Jack. I merged them both. I don't think Mike Jackson has what it takes to weather the storm that Pete Rodriguez is going to put on, especially in the first round. If you guys haven't seen the details of this man's record, he hasn't gone out of the first round in his professional record. And in fact, in his amateur record, he hasn't gone out of the first round, or he went out of the first round only once into the second round, and not very far into the second round at that. So the man's lost twice. He's been choked out and he's been knocked out, like Mark said, by Maddalena. Pete Rodriguez is there to fight. Mike Jackson is there to be there and win and kind of ride that wave. He's generally not in there to fuck people up. And that's not the way you want to be against a guy who's in there to rip your head off. So I don't see Mike Jackson being able to stop him. I'm not a particular fan of what I've seen in the cage from him. So I'm going to go with Pete Rodriguez also by round 1 KO. I think he puts him to sleep.
All right. And Mike didn't send us a pick for that fight. We have some of Mike's picks, people, but not that one. He started a little further up the card.
Chooch. All right. Next on the list, Tatsuro Taira versus CJ Vergara. Tatsuro coming in with an 11-0 record, perfect and spotless. CJ Vergara coming in with a 10-3-1 record. Tatsuro's latest fight was against Carlos Candelario, which was a decision win. CJ Vergara also with a split decision win against Clayton Rodriguez. Let us know what those odds are.
So Tatsuro Taira is favored. He is minus 240. CJ Vergara is the plus 200 dog. You guys know I'm intrigued by Tatsuro Taira. I talked him up a bit back when he debuted. 22 years old, undefeated, as Omar said, at 11-0. Kind of the next hope out of Japan right now. He showed why in his debut. He was sharp. He was fast. He showed you that he was skilled everywhere that fight went. If there was a knock, you could say that he was maybe just a bit tentative, which could be chalked up to the debut. We'll probably find out in this one. But that's why I like this CJ Vergara matchup, because he is not tentative at all. He's a tough, gritty dude who continues to bring it, even in fights that he's losing. He's not going to go away. He's going to make you work. He showed that against Clayton Rodriguez. That was a contestable decision, but it went his way because of the fact that he was a dog. So I like the test for Tatsuro Taira, but I do think he'll pass it. I think that the grappling may end up being the X factor in this one. Vergara, as much as I like Taira on the feet, I feel like Vergara is kind of quirky and has success on the feet. So I think the grappling may be the difference here. I think Taira will be better in the transitions, in the scrambles, which I do expect to happen. I think he could even find a sub. Almost picked that, but I'm just going to say it is a UD for Taira in another fight where he kind of shows off the full bag of skills of how he can fight anywhere the fight goes.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. I think Taira is just a better overall fighter, but I also had the same feeling about his debut performance too. I figured he just had some nerves because he's usually, at least in the videos that I've seen of him from Japan, he seems like a very aggressive fighter, and I felt like he was a lot more, like he paced himself a little bit more. He was a little bit more, I don't know if it's tentative is really the word, but definitely didn't feel like he was pushing the gas pedal the way I've seen in some of his other videos. Hopefully he's gotten out of that if that's the case, and we really see him kind of turn it up right from the jump. So the real problem, into you've already said, is Vergara doesn't go away. He's very, very difficult to put away. He's in there even when he's injured, when he's hurt. The man is still throwing shit that'll definitely put you on wobbly legs if it lands clean. So I think Taira has a better I think he has a better overall skill set. I think he's technically more sound. And I think even with Vergara's kind of unorthodox zombie style that he has, I think he just ends up being a punching bag for the most part. So I'm going to go with Taira. I think he gets it done in the second round. I think we'll go TKO.
Nice.
Let's see. Next on the list, is it Piera?
Yep.
Piera Rodriguez versus Sam Hughes. Piera La Fiera. I love that. That's a fun one right there. Piera with a perfect 8-0 record. Last fight was against Kay Hansen with a unanimous decision. And Sam Page Hughes, less of a fan of that one, with a 7-4 record and a recent win over Elise Reed via TKO, elbows and punches of the third round. Take it away.
What is La Fiera?
I want to say it's not fire. Let me see. The Raid?
Because that's what I thought, and I was like, nope, it's not fire. So what is it? You're the worst Spanish speaker that I know.
Yeah, that's probably true. Listen.
Unless she's...
Fierce.
Wait, what is she? Is she Brazilian
Venezuelan
or Mexican? Huh?
Venezuelan.
Oh, Venezuelan. All right. Mm-hmm. I'm 0 for 2. All right, continuing. She is the favorite here, Piera. She is minus 190. Sam Hughes is plus 155. Sam Hughes is going to be looking to continue her run since joining Fortis MMA. She started 0-3 in the UFC, switched things up, and immediately won 2 in a row, and honestly looked significantly improved. I've said it before on here. She's letting herself fight now. She used to seem kind of tight, maybe a little too stuck to game plans. Now she is letting herself flow, and it's paying off, and her skills are showing through more. On the other hand, I was somewhat impressed by Piera Rodriguez's debut, which was the W over Kay Hansen that you mentioned. It's tough to formulate an opinion on how good Kay Hansen is exactly, which makes it tough for me to evaluate how meaningful that win was. But she is undefeated. She's 8-0. She looked like she was comfortable in the wrestling with Kay Hansen, which I think matters here because I'm sure Sam Hughes will look to test that. So, I don't know. I'm torn. In my head, I thought Piera was bigger, and then because Sam Hughes is not that big, I looked. It's actually Hughes who's bigger, so Piera's pretty small. I guess I forgot that from watching her fight Kay. So the size shouldn't really be a factor. I do think the fight's going to happen in close, which is usually what Hughes wants, but I kind of just keep seeing in my head that it might be Piera who has the more impactful moments and ends up stealing like a close fight that way. Like she lands the 2 or 3 biggest shots of the fight, even if Hughes is maybe more so winning second to second. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say it's a close fight. I will say Piera Rodriguez wins by split decision.
Yeah, I like it. So when you were talking about it was hard to take away what, from the Kay Hansen fight, I liked her technique in that fight. And that was really what I took away because to your credit, Kay Hansen isn't necessarily the biggest test as far as, one of those quality wins that we've talked about. But what she did show as far as her performance was concerned left me wanting more. Like I wanted to see more of her. Yep. I was definitely impressed with what she brought to the table in that fight. So a fight with Sam Hughes, like Sam Hughes is jacked, dog. Like Sam Hughes is strong as shit. And so the wrestling is definitely going to play a factor in this, especially the way she's been fighting in her last couple fights. I want to say that there's going to be a lot of early adversity when it comes to her trying to get Sam Hughes off of Piera, right? Like there's going to be a lot of moments where she's going to want to go for the takedown and Piera's going to end up fighting it. And I do think that Piera's going to end up throwing back. There's going to be a lot of countering in those moments, but I think that doesn't last for the entire fight. Where I'm struggling is can she do that for 2 rounds at least, or are we going to see her fade in round 2 and then lose 2 and 3? I think that's really where my biggest issue is at this point, because I do think Piera comes out of the first round with a win, but 2 and 3 I think are the ones that are going to be heavily contested by the end of it. So just based on things that I've seen, and I guess I've been rooting for this girl even in her last fight, I'm going to go with Piera Rodriguez. I do think it's going to be a split decision as well, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Sam Hughes comes out with a decision on this one either.
Yeah, neither would I. This is the first of like 7 or 8 fights on this card where I literally was like, fuck, I'm really torn. Like, there's a lot of closely matched fights.
Yeah. Do we know who runs Fortis? Who runs Fortis MMA? Do you know?
Yeah. I always get these 2 names confused. One of them is the dude who died, and one is the dude who runs Fortis. Is Saif Sayoud the guy that died, or is that the guy that runs Fortis?
He must be the guy that runs Fortis, because I don't think Saif Sayoud died.
Who died that was like Yanez's coach?
Oh, I don't know. He was a boxing guy, and I think he was a bigger guy, but that wasn't Saif Sayoud.
I think they have similar names. They both start with S. For some reason, my brain stays mushing them together.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure. But okay.
Right.
I thought I can't remember what.
Saif Sayoud is the Fortis MMA coach.
Okay. I keep thinking, I don't remember what James Krause's gym name is.
Yeah, what is his gym name?
Yeah.
Saul Solis. So you see why I get them
Saul,
confused.
Yeah.
Double S's. That's Yanez's coach. What is James Krause's gym called? Now you have me curious of that. Glory.
Definitely didn't remember that. Jeez.
Yeah, I didn't either.
All right, moving down the list here. Our next fight is Joanderson Brito versus Lucas Alexander. Joanderson Brito coming in with a record of 13 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. His last fight was against Andre Fili, who he caught clean with some TKO right in the first round.
With some TKO.
With some TKO.
Like
and then Lucas Alexander is making his debut here this weekend. Like I said, he was filling in
Super
for somebody.
Bagdasarian.
Thank you. Shows you how good my memory is. Said that like 30 minutes ago. So he has a record of 7-2. He is currently on a 5-fight win streak for what it matters. And his last fight, he won via TKO arm injury. So I wonder if he broke somebody's arm or something to that effect. But he has basically finished 3 out of his last 5 fights too. So he's got a little bit of momentum on his side here. Joanderson Brito has only won his last fight and then lost the fight before against Bill Algeo, whichever, if I remember right, was a scrap.
It was Brito came out really hot in the first round and then kind of faded, and Algeo just weathered it and took the next 2.
But Algeo got his ass beat in the first round, didn't he? Like, wasn't he wobbly and all this stuff?
He could have been. I don't know if it was ass beat, but I do remember thinking that Brito came out really hot. You could be right.
Yeah, I don't remember though. I've seen so many fights at this point. It's all just violence. All right, man. What are those odds?
So it's pretty clean in this one. Brito is exactly a 4-1 favorite, minus 400. Alexander is a 3-1 dog, plus 300. So as we said, this was originally supposed to be Brito against Melsik Bagdasarian, which I would have loved. I was into that fight. Unfortunately, Bagdasarian falls out. We get Lucas Alexander filling in on short notice. Not going to pretend I'm familiar with him. His resume is not exactly one that is full of relevant names. No one to really look at and hang your hat on to say, okay, he's been in there with this guy, been in there with this guy. So I thought he was going to be a bigger dog than this, but I think he does have a size advantage. It's funny, he's kind of so unknown that I can't even find his reach. I can see that he's 3 inches taller than Brito. I'm imagining he's going to have a reach advantage as well, so maybe that's what plays into these odds being not even wider. But I'm going to assume he's not on Joanderson Brito's level. I'm going to assume fighting a guy who comes out as aggressive as Brito does is probably not a great recipe for a short-notice fight, especially where he didn't even really get to scout the guy. What I will say is I bet Alexander comes out hot and tries to match that because he knows what he's got to get through here. So, especially when you haven't got to train fully, you might as well come out and go balls to the wall in round 1 before you may get tired. So we might see a car crash in round 1 in this fight. But I'm going to go with Brito. I'm going to say club and sub, round 1.
Nice. Yeah, I find Brito to be pretty damn well-rounded, all things considered. I think if it hits the ground, I think he's liable to take anybody's arm or neck home with him. And when he stands, that dude looks like he hits hard as shit.
Yeah.
And he's another one that's really not that small for 145. Even at 5'8", I feel like it's a good size for that weight class. So I have a little bit more trust in Brito. I also don't really know Lucas Alexander. It does look like he scraps, though. I mean, like I said, he's got 3 TKOs. The arm injury, I'm assuming, didn't come from them hugging. So I'm sure there was some violence involved to get there. So he seems like he's a banger, but I think Brito is just overall such a great fighter that I don't really think it's going to matter. So I'm going to go with Joanderson Brito. I also think he's going to finish him. I just think it's going to happen in round 1.
I said round 1 too.
Oh, I thought you said round 2. Fuck.
No, round 1.
Yeah.
I said club and sub. That's probably what you're thinking of. So what are you saying, KO?
Yeah, I think there's just going to be a lot of erratic movement going on in there, and I think Brito is just a little bit more accurate, and I think he catches him coming in and puts him out.
Yeah, like it.
Right. Next on the list for the, I believe, 3rd time, Nick Maximov versus Jacob Malkoun. Nick Maximov, for those of you who don't know, is fighting out of the 209, out of the Nick Diaz army. Wasn't super impressed with his debut. but I was hopeful that he would show us something more. His last fight against Andre Petroski, he got completely run over and choked out, so basically run over in his own house. It wasn't a great look. I'm sure he had some words afterwards, with the team about, what is going on with his jiu-jitsu. But he gets another chance to perform here against Jacob Malkoun. Jacob Malkoun has 6 wins and 2 losses. His last fight was against the great Brendan Allen. But he did make it through, and he lost a decision win to him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens between these two guys here. Mark, what are the odds?
So surprisingly to me, and I'm assuming surprisingly to you, Nick Maximov is the favorite. He is minus 150. Jacob Malkoun is plus 120. I do really like this matchup. I'm very intrigued to see whose wrestling can prevail here. Maximov, as you said, guy was 8-0. He picked up his first career loss in dramatic fashion in his last fight, getting subbed by Andre Petroski in about a minute, so we will see how he bounces back here. Jacob Malkoun, you mentioned lost to Brendan Allen, but he almost managed to steal a decision off of Brendan Allen. So it was almost impressive in a loss. So they're coming from different places into this fight. The size does point to Maximov. He's 3 inches taller and 3 inches longer. Granted, he's not really much of a striker. Neither is Malkoun, but if this thing is on the feet, I think it's probably Malkoun who has the advantage, so maybe that reach doesn't matter all that much. But I do think the wrestling is going to play here. I feel like they're just both such natural wrestlers that I can't imagine this being one of those fights where two guys who can wrestle end up striking all fight. I just think their minds are so set on taking the fight to the ground that's what we're going to see. So yeah, I was impressed by Malkoun, but the way he fights is not my favorite. He has a game and it works, and his single leg is really effective, but he has kind of that drag it out, lay a little bit type of style. And as much as I didn't expect to be picking Nick Maximov when I first thought about this fight, because I'm not super impressed by him, I'm kind of thinking that style may actually make this a good matchup for Maximov, because he can kind of match the wrestling more or less and wait while Malkoun is not necessarily being super aggressive, and wait to find an opportunity to attack. And Maximov is the one who has the more dangerous grappling for sure. So it could absolutely be Malkoun dictating and kind of just showing that he's the better wrestler and the stronger guy and winning a decision that way. But I think I'm going to say that Malkoun is like a little too lazy in a moment and gets caught in something by Nick Maximov, because he is an opportunistic grappler, if nothing else. So I'm going to say round 2 sub for Nick Maximov to bounce back.
I don't think Maximov has any wrestling at all. I was less than impressed when it came to his ground game, because that's where I thought his bread and butter would be. I thought we would be able to see something impressive, but like the most impressive thing is how much he can bend. Like, he's flexible as hell, but all he did was sit on the ground and just be bendy. He didn't do anything. So I don't really have. I honestly think this fight's going to be a little boring, because to your point, Malkoun is.
Oh, I agree.
I just think it's going to be super stale. Malkoun is basically just somebody who would definitely lay on top of you if given the opportunity. And I don't think Nick Maximov's ground game is particularly aggressive. And I don't think he's going to be going for submissions as much as one would think somebody out of a Nick Diaz Academy would be going for. I would love to be proven wrong, but there's nothing that I've seen that would make me think otherwise. Side note, they have Jacob Malkoun as 6'1" on Sherdog. On Wikipedia, he's 5'9", and on the UFC's website, he's 5'9".
Yeah, that's what I was just looking. Because when I was just reading that off, I was like, didn't I have Malkoun at 5'9"?
So crazy. That is a massive disparity in the height reporting there. So, Jesus.
Wow. I mean, it's got to be Sherdog that's wrong, right? If all those other places have him at 5'9".
I would have to think UFC has it right. I mean, they're the ones who are actually, like, measuring him. So.
Wow.
But when you were talking about how Maximov was bigger, I was like, where? Man, it's 6'1" over here. This man is huge.
Wow.
So I'm not particularly thrilled for this one. We'll be lucky to see a finish in this fight, as far as I'm concerned. But when I wake up, I expect that Jacob Malkoun will have won the decision. So I'll go with that.
Fair enough. Literally was 51-49 on my coin. And if it goes the Malkoun way, it will be a boring decision, I'm sure. So, yeah.
I agree. All right, next on the list, Raphael Assuncao, relegated to the prelims.
I don't understand.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Just how dare you? And not even... when they at least make them the headliners of the prelims, like, I don't feel as salty about it because
it is the headliner of the prelims. It is the headliner of the prelims.
Oh, I thought it wasn't. I thought there was one more right afterwards.
I don't think so. No, it's the headliner of the prelims.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it says Mana Martinez and Brandon Davis are next after Raphael Assuncao and Victor Henry.
That's the opener of the main card.
Did they move it? Because that's not what it is on the UFC website.
That's what it was when I typed this up like 3 hours ago.
They said, fuck your typing, and they changed it.
Oh, dude, they made the main card only 5 fights instead of 6.
So I will return to my initial, how dare you? How dare you? You could have definitely made that fight the headliner. Look, I've spoken about Mana Martinez many a times. I'm a fan. I like his dog. I like the way, he comes in there to fight. But it's Raphael Assuncao. Like, why do we need to have this conversation here? I don't understand.
Yeah, there's only arguably 3 fights on this card that should be higher on the card than this fight. Like, it's not just Raphael Assuncao. It's Victor Henry, who just came in and debuted by beating Raoni Barcelos, and now you're giving him a fight against a ranked fighter. Like, why do you have them relegated to the prelims? It makes no sense.
We understand that Raphael Assuncao has lost his last 4. Like, I get it. But he's lost against Ricky Simon, who is an absolute animal. He's lost to Cody Garbrandt, who, it happens. Cody gets one every now and again. Corey Sandhagen, who is an animal. And Marlon Rice, who somebody had to lose against him. So these are good names that he's losing against, and I think people are just not showing him the respect that he deserves. The man has 27 wins and 9 losses overall, most of which are in the UFC, for those of you who are not aware. The man has been in the UFC since 2011. He's put in his work. He
was ranked like number 2 or 3 at one point in time. Like, he reached nearly the peak.
Yeah, he was like the Joker of that division, just like always there, but never the king. You know what I mean? Like always there. Yeah. But I just think people are just really forgetting how nasty Assuncao really is. To be fair, Victor Henry, that performance against Raoni Barcelos was pretty nasty from what I remember. And I think I was very, very surprised. Like I remember feeling to myself, who the fuck is Victor Henry?
So was everybody, dude. He was short notice.
Where did he come from?
Yeah.
So I'm excited, man. Hopefully the man at this point, right, he's got a full camp. This wasn't a late notice. So we're going to see what I would assume is the best of what Victor Henry has to offer. And if what he did against Raoni Barcelos was short notice, I don't understand how this is not the headline. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. I don't get it. It's, I don't know about headliner, but yeah, it should
be.
Oh,
I meant of the prelims.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I got to pick something, right? So if I'm going to be picking, dude, I think this is a scrap, man. I think this is going to be a real test for Victor Henry, and I think it could go either way, if we're being completely honest. I think Victor Henry's striking is completely dynamic. I think if there's one thing that Assuncao has is experience in the UFC, but if we look at their records, Raphael Assuncao 27-9, Victor Henry 22-5. They're not really that dissimilar as far as their mileage is concerned. But UFC experience can sometimes make or break the difference. So I'm going to go with Raphael Assuncao by a hard-fought decision. I would not be surprised if Victor Henry could pull it off, though.
So you may be surprised to hear that Victor Henry is a minus 340 favorite, which is a bit wild.
Rude. It's rude, Mark.
Raphael Assuncao is plus 260. He is 40 years old. He hasn't won a fight in 4 years, as we said, but Omar listed him off. It's a very solid list of opponents that he's been losing to. Granted, still not a great sign that he hasn't won a fight in a while. And then Victor Henry, as we were starting to say, came on scene in short notice, fought Hani Barcelos, wasn't given much of a chance, looked incredible, so impressive. He pushed a ridiculous pace throughout the whole fight. And Omar mentioned the career record of Victor Henry. His pre-UFC resume is actually legit. Like, there's some names as you scroll that thing. Kyler Phillips is on there, for example. He beat Kyler Phillips pre-UFC. So I don't know how it took this man until he was 35 years old to get this chance, and he had to do it as a late notice replacement on top of that. It doesn't seem to make a ton of sense to me, and obviously he showed right away that he should have had this chance probably a while ago. With all that being said, it does feel weird on paper for me to be picking a guy who most people didn't know existed one fight ago against a perennial top 10 fighter in the UFC, but that's what I'm going to do. I agree that he should be favored here. I think that he's too dynamic for the current version of Raphael Assuncao, and I just think if he pushes that same pace that Assuncao can't hang anymore with a pace like that. He's always dangerous, but I think he's just going to get a bit overwhelmed in this fight. I think he's going to drop rounds. I will say it is at least 29-28, if not even 30-27 in favor of Victor Henry.
Man, I really hope he puts on a y'all must have forgot performance, because the disrespect from all angles is just out of control. That line is rude.
The line's rude. Wild.
All right. So apparently, headlining the prelims, Leo Mana Boy Martinez. That's a long one there. Versus Brandon the Killer B Davis. We got another Killer B? I don't know.
Who else is Killer B? Oh, Ben Saunders.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I can't take Ben Saunders' name. Nope.
That's a very specific nickname. Nope. Like, you can't.
Nope.
Yeah. Weird. All right. Mana Martinez is 9-3, and Brandon Davis is 14-9. Mana coming off of a unanimous decision loss against Ronnie Lawrence, and Brandon coming off of a TKO loss, elbows and punches, against Batterell Dana. Dana, yeah. I actually kind of remember that one. That was a bad one. He didn't look particularly fantastic in that one. But tell us what the odds are in this one.
So they're fairly close. Mana Martinez is minus 155. Brandon Davis is plus 130 as the dog. I'm assuming this fight is as high as it is on the card because they expect it to be a scrap, which it very well may be with the two styles of fighter that are in this fight. Brandon Davis is 2-6 in the UFC, but he is live. Like, he gives guys trouble. He's kind of always in the fight. He even gave Giga Chikadze some trouble. The issue is then he kind of looks very bad at times as well. Like, he's a very hot and cold fighter even within the fight. Like, he'll figure something out and he'll look great, and then the guy he's fighting will figure out how to counter that and he'll look lost. So he's a tough fighter to read. But with that said, I feel like we kind of know who he is at this point. We kind of know his level. I don't expect him to be improving at this stage of his career necessarily, whereas Mana Martinez is a young fighter. He's an improving fighter. He looks better each time we see him. So I think it's kind of just one of those arrows going in opposite directions fights. And I think also the fact that Mana is a pressure fighter helps, because Brandon does well when he can play that role, and I don't think he really gets to here. Plus, Mana showed even his last fight in a defeat that he will not go away. I mean, he almost ended up finishing that thing in round 3 after getting drubbed in the first 2 rounds. So I don't worry about him weathering any storm that might potentially come from Brandon Davis. So I think he can take the fight over. as it gets into the latter portion of the fight and take a decision, I will say 29-28, Mana Martinez.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Martinez is just he's more of a dog. I don't expect him to quit at any stage. I think, like you said, like Davis, it almost seems like Davis will get frustrated with the fact that somebody has figured his shit out, and he's just like, man, fuck this, and just sort of like, kind of coasts his way through the rest of it and doesn't really try to adapt to the changes that are being made throughout the fight. And not to say that Mana does, but Mana is so wild and so such a dog that he just comes forward and fights regardless of, what changes are being made. I don't think it really affects him to that extent, at least not at this point in his game. So I'm going to go with Mana Martinez. I do think at some point he overwhelms Davis. I think we can actually see him get a TKO in this fight. I'm going to go with round 3 TKO.
Nice. Oh, and we have picks from Mike starting now. Mike is going the opposite way of us. He is going for a UD for Brandon Davis.
Interesting. All right. Well, kicking off the main card for the UFC Fight Night this weekend, we have Misha Cirkunov versus Alonzo Menifield. Misha Cirkunov with a record of 15 wins and 8 losses. His last fight against Wellington Turman definitely did not go his way, as he was submitted via armbar in the second round. Alonzo Atomic Menifield comes in with a record of 12-3. His last fight was against Askar Mosharov, who he absolutely destroyed in the first round via TKO. What are the odds for this one?
So Alonzo is favored here. He's minus 220. Misha Cirkunov is plus 180. I don't know how to pick Misha Cirkunov fights at this point in time. The old Misha Cirkunov from a few years back, I would have picked to beat Alonzo Menifield. I really think that he was better than Menifield, but he has not looked good recently. He dropped to middleweight after Ryan Spann beat him. Got beat by Krzysztof Jotko. Granted, it was a close fight. Then he gets tapped out by Wellington Turman, which is not necessarily a great look. Now he comes back up to light heavyweight, hoping that's going to fix things. It's just not great vibes right now. And on top of that, I've heard some theories that he's fighting very compromised and that his left arm is somewhat ruined, which is the opposite of encouraging. So I don't want to pick him. On the other hand, Alonzo Menifield, while good, is not an unbeatable fighter by any means. He's got power and he can do a bit of everything. But other than catching Paul Craig early in his UFC career, I've never been terribly impressed. Like, yeah, he has performances like his last one where he looks great, but he was fighting more or less a bum, for lack of a better word. I don't think he has those quality wins on his resume necessarily outside of the Paul Craig one. Whereas Cirkunov does. He has shown that he can beat some of the higher level guys. So that's why I'm torn. And I guess I'm going to cheat a little bit here. If I had to bet my money on this fight, I would bet Menifield just because I'm concerned of this rumor about Cirkunov's arm. If he comes out and we see a minute or two of this fight and it looks like his arm is fine, I'm actually going to say he leans on the grappling a bit and wins a really ugly fight on the cards. If a minute or two into this fight his left arm looks weird, I think we probably get the opposite result. I think ugly fight that Menifield wins on the card. So I guess my pick hangs on this arm, but I would say do not bet this fight.
I haven't particularly been on board with Menifield in the past. He is a very hot and cold fighter. However, the last fight that he had against Mosharov was, I think, in my opinion, the best fight that he's ever had, just from a performance standpoint.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It is possible.
Craig, yeah.
Well, even the Paul Craig fight, it was a good finish. It was a good fight, but there was something different about this last fight. The way he approached it, the aggression, and the technique that went into it too, because he was measuring that kid the entire fight for as long as it lasted. So There were a lot of improvements, I thought, that were significant in Menifield's game in this last fight, and with as short as it was, it makes me wonder how many more improvements have been made. So I think we might be there. I haven't seen that from Cirkunov. I've seen a decline from Cirkunov. And I just think that Menifield probably has more to offer at this point. And I think, to your credit, worst case scenario, I'm fucking dead wrong, and he just relies on an ugly decision win. Either way, I think Menifield is probably going to walk away the victor here. However, I like I said, I think Menifield is doing something. I think he's figured something out. Something might have clicked. I'm going to go with Menifield. I'm going to go with a TKO win, round 3.
Mike feels even stronger about Menifield than you do. He is going with Menifield by a round 1 knockout.
Oh, wow. He says Cirkunov dies. Damn.
I wonder if Cirkunov loses this fight, if that would be walking papers for him, which would be a pretty quick fall from grace.
Yeah, I mean, I think the run that he was on that was super significant was like back in 2015, 2016, something in that area.
I think it was more recent than that, man.
Was it?
It was like 2018. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like it's only been like a few years of badness. Yeah, in 2019 is when he subbed Jimmy Crute.
Oh, the Peruvian necktie. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I guess his previous stringing together of wins was back kind of when you said. But, like, he was still up there, ranked light heavyweight, as recently as 2019.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Next on the list, we have Jordan Wright getting another shot here against Dusko Todorovic. Jordan Wright, I have picked in the past and have been almost wrong every time. He has a record of 12 wins and 3 losses. The Beverly Hills Ninja had a recent submission loss via guillotine choke in the first round against Marc-Andre Barriault. And Dusko Thunder Todorovic, with a record of 11-3, with a recent loss against Chidi and Chikawani, which, let's be real, is going to happen. Before that was a TKO win over Maki Pitolo. Interesting little fight we have here. What are the odds for this one?
So I thought the odds would be tight. Dusko is favored 2-1 here. He's minus 200. Jordan Wright is plus 165.
Yeah.
Neither of these guys have lit the world on fire in the UFC. They're both 2-3 in their UFC tenures. I would say both of them need this fight. I think there may be some job security at play here potentially. Another tough one to pick. Another fight that I feel like could go either way, as is becoming the theme as we work up this card. I have been more impressed in moments with Jordan Wright than I have been with Dusko in terms of their best moments that they have shown us. I've also probably been more disappointed in the decisions of Jordan Wright at times. So I really have no confidence in either guy to win this fight, but obviously someone has to. I guess I'm going to say that for once, as of late, Jordan Wright steps up. I think that he can do what I thought he may be able to do at other times, which is keep Dusko off of him, kind of resist that grappling, create space, maybe land a couple elbows with his back against the cage as he creates that space, keeping Dusko off of him. Maybe some body shots. I'll say it's a close fight, and he kind of adds up the damage a bit and gets Dusko out of there in round 3 TKO.
The thing that drives me crazy about Jordan Wright is actually the way that he leans up against the cage. The kid is so tall, and he has dexterity in his legs. He has the ability to really keep people off of him and use his length to his advantage. And the kid fucking shells up like he's Stefan Struve. Like he just stays against the cage and just lets people tee off on him when he doesn't move. And I don't understand. I don't understand the thought process. I don't know if he's gassed. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's really killed the whole Jordan Wright train that I was trying to ride for a little bit. Even his win against Jamie Pickett just You know what I mean? It's like cool, but it doesn't, to me, it doesn't overshadow the significant holes in his game that he has. It's not to say Dusko is, oh, by the way, I think I've been saying Dusko when I first said it. I don't think I said Dusko, but
Yeah, Dusko.
Dusko. I don't think, Dusko doesn't have the best record in the world right now, but at the same time, I think I have a little bit more confidence in him at this point than I do in Jordan Wright. I'm going to go with Dusko by second round TKO.
I also meant to add Jordan Wright has a 3-inch reach advantage, so that kind of played into my thinking maybe he could pull it off.
That boy won't use his fucking reach. It's exactly my point. Is he's gifted, but he just doesn't use it. He doesn't know. I think it's a waste, man. I hope I see something different, but his last few fights have just been underwhelming in that department.
I'm envisioning a push Dusko off, create space, and then he's able to land before Todorovic is able to land. That's what I'm envisioning. We'll see what happens when he dies in 1 minute.
Pushing forward, head down, while Jordan Wright realizes he's against the cage, and Jordan Wright shells up while Dusko tees off on him, goes in between the guard, and Wright's on the floor with his legs bent. It's going to be bad.
Well could be. Very well could be. Wait, Mike.
Right.
Mike has Jordan Wright by UD.
You put weight first. All right. Next on the list, we have. We're getting into some meat and potatoes here.
Yeah, we have 3 good ones.
Askar Askarov versus Brandon Royval, our boy. At least my boy. Boy's wild.
Mike's boy.
Askar Bullet Askarov is a 14-1 ranked record fighter. His last fight against Kaikar France was a loss, a unanimous decision loss, which I'm pretty sure he lost every round in that fight. That was a handed loss, I think, the first time that he's ever had in his career. I don't think anybody's really beat him like that before, or ever, for that matter.
He definitely won a round in that fight.
Did he?
Yeah, because I remember being nervous at the decision. Now
Okay.
I gotta look. I'm pulling it up as we speak.
Brandon,
Yeah, 29-28 on every card.
Every card.
He won the first round of the fight.
All right. Brandon Raw Dog Royval with a record of 14 wins and 6 losses. Last fight was against Matt Schnell with a guillotine submission win in the first round. What are the odds for this banger?
So Askar is a -240 favorite. Brandon Royval is +190. This is a great matchup and a pretty difficult fight to pick because I'm kind of thinking 2 contradictory thoughts at the same time. The first one is that because Askarov is so strong and so good in the wrestling and in the clinch situations, that he's maybe the kind of fighter who can nullify a lot of Royval's craziness. But the second is that I wonder if Royval is so damn relentless and random and unorthodox that he's the right kind of guy to find a hole in like the more straightforward grappling game of Askarov. So it's like I could absolutely see both things happening. You know, it's like the by the book perfect grappler versus the throw the book out the window grappler. So it's intriguing. I do think I'm leaning Askarov for kind of the same reason that I took Pantoja to beat Royval, honestly. I mean, Pantoja is a higher level of grappler than Askarov, but even so, I just feel like there's a level of elite fighter, if you will, where Royval's wildness ends up looking a little more like sloppiness because the opponent knows how to handle it and counter it, and it ends up being not quite as effective as it is against some lesser fighters, which was the case against Pantoja. I could see Askarov making it look like that a little bit just because his base is so strong. He's so balanced. He fights smart. You know, he's a skilled grappler. Plus, he's the better striker as well, which I haven't even touched on. So when this thing isn't crazy and scrambly, I expect him to probably be picking up some points in the striking department. Obviously, Royval will try to make it as scrambly as he can make it. But I just think there's too many small checks toward Askarov for me to go Royval here, so I will say Askarov, UD.
Yeah.
You can go the other way? I'm interested.
So, like, as far as my analysis of it, I think Askarov does have just the slight edge. I think we get into a point where Royval will try to look for submissions because Askarov is going to give him the opportunities to, right? There's going to be a lot of takedowns. There's going to be a lot of takedown attempts. Probably a few single legs, necks all in the air, stuff like that. And I think Royval tries to capitalize on a lot of those moments. But I think in the end, I don't think he's going to be able to finish him. And I think what it ends up doing is it keeps Royval on the ground and it continues to give Askarov position and top control. And I think, as much as I like the way Royval is relentless, you're not going to win a round trying to throw as many submissions up as you can if you can't lock any of them up and make any of them actually a problem. The only time we're really going to get to that point is if you have something really locked in, squeezed up, you know what I mean? And either time runs out or something along those lines. But, this is one of those situations where I think Askarov is going to be just a hair ahead of the exchanges on the ground with Royval. And I think that's where a lot of it will probably take place because Royval, I don't think, is going to try to stop him from taking him down, at least not early. Maybe his corner eventually will be like, all right, we got to cut that shit out. That's not going to work. It's not, we're not going to win like that. The more interesting thing for me personally would be their ground games canceled out and we see a scrap on the feet, because I actually think on the feet, while Askarov is more technically sound, I think that's a department where Royval's crazy shit will actually work in his favor, because it's hard to train for those crazy things on the feet, especially when you train to do crazy shit on the feet. So I think Brandon Royval could capitalize in that department if it ends up staying up top, but I don't see that happening. So I will be rooting heavily for my man Brandon Royval, but I do believe Askarov will be having a decision win by the end of it.
I could even see Askarov come in and look to purely strike, to say, like, I'm not even fucking with the Royval grappling. Because Askarov is a dangerous striker, and I wonder if he thinks he could just kind of outclass Royval if he keeps it there. There's a lot of avenues this fight could go. I don't see. I totally believe that he believes that. I don't think that would happen, though. I think Royval is a lot more sound on the feet than people may be giving him credit for, especially because when you look at tape, he's doing a bunch of weird things, moving around, unorthodox for sure, spinning back fists and the like. But the reality is that kid is a flow fighter. And when he feels those moments, when he feels that stuff, he's reactionary. And again, those are the kind of fighters that are dangerous because you can't train for the flow. The flow is what it is in those moments. You know what I mean? Like it's a very different game than trying to train a very static kind of style. So I think Royval has a really good chance of coming away victorious. But if we go down to the ground, I just think Askarov will be a step ahead. And I don't think Royval would ever let 15 minutes go by of just striking. I think he's too inclined to be scrambling and doing crazy shit that if it was turning into a striking match, that he would be trying to drag it down in some fashion.
For those of you who may want to participate in a drinking game that night, you can absolutely add to the list of things how many guillotines Brandon Royval will try to attempt by the end of that fight. You take a shot every time. And I guarantee you, just in that one fight, you'll probably end up drunk as shit by the time it's all said and done. So,
Mike is going with Askar by round 3 TKO.
That's rude as fuck. That's
Royval is Mike's guy. That must have hurt for him to say.
Yeah, that's wild. The only man to put out Royval is my boy, Brandon Moreno. Right. And I just don't think Askarov is on the Brandon Moreno level. So I don't think he
literally proved he was on that level. He drew with him. They were at the same exact level.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, not the same level of finisher, I would not say.
All right. Next on the list, our boy Cub Swanson versus Jonathan Martinez. Cub Swanson should need no introduction, but we were going to give him one anyway. Cub Killer Swanson with a record of 28 wins, 12 losses. His last win was against the unbeatable Darren Elkins. The Damage, the Infinite Zombie, was actually finished by Cub Swanson via TKO round 1. Let me repeat that for you folks again. The man who can't be finished was finished in round 1 by Cub Swanson. So, for those of you who thought, Cub is old, Cub Swanson, put some fucking respect on the man's name. Let's go. He will be fighting Jonathan Dragon Martinez. Martinez coming in with a record of 16 wins and 4 losses. His last fight was against Vince Morales, and he won a unanimous decision against him. This line, I mean, like, if it's not Cub Swanson plus, like, 250, it's
minus,
fucking...
you mean? You want him to be
Yeah, I'm sorry. Minus 250. It's rude. Anything less than 250 is fucking rude.
Well, it's really rude because he is the underdog. He's plus 160. Jonathan Martinez is minus 195.
This is garbage.
I am having a hard time with this fight. I've been going back and forth on this fight all day. I convinced myself I was going one way earlier, switch back again. I love Jonathan Martinez. I love seeing him get an opportunity like this. I've been a fan of his since he debuted back in 2018. He's just such an enjoyable watch. He's so smooth. He's so clean in everything he does. He dictates every exchange that's going to happen. He's so responsible defensively. He rips leg kicks and body kicks, rips them. But on the flip side of that, he's not overly aggressive. It's the one thing I've always said he's missing is a little bit more killer instinct. I think could take him to the next level. So I can't see him getting Cub out of there unless it's like a perfectly placed body shot or something along those lines. So he's going to have to deal with Cub all fight long. And Cub looked incredible in his last fight. The patience and calmness that he showed while just murdering Darren Elkins pretty much was off the charts. But where I get messed up here is that I don't love this bantamweight move for him. At least I don't think I do. I guess we'll see how I feel after Saturday night. I don't really get why. Like, okay, he wasn't going to be the featherweight champion anymore, but he's not going to be the bantamweight champion either. So what is the point of this? And, like, he was still a borderline ranked featherweight. I think he might have just fallen out of the rankings. I think I had him myself at, like, 15, 16, something like that. So it's not like he was, like, falling off horribly. So I don't know if I understand the move. I don't know if he was maybe just, like, naturally getting a little smaller as he's getting a little older, and he was like, hey, I think I'm a bantamweight now. I don't know. I didn't love that picture. I felt like his head looked so big in comparison to his body, the picture that we talked about back in the beginning of the show. If you're only watching a clip here and didn't hear that, it was a picture of Cub showing what the cut has looked like. Granted, him and Martinez are actually like the same exact size, so you could argue that Cub's body type fits in this division. But, I just, like, when Cub was saying he might go down to bantamweight to fight Uriah Faber, it was one thing. Because I was like, all right, I get why he'd want to do that, because that's a cool fucking fight. As much as I love Jonathan Martinez, it's Jonathan Martinez. So, I don't know. I would like to know what the reasoning is. It concerns me a little bit. But I do think I like Cub. I'm so torn. I hate that someone has to lose this fight. I could absolutely see the kicks of Martinez giving Cub trouble. I could see Cub looking a bit slow at bantamweight and us saying, like, he shouldn't have made this cut. But gun to my head, I believe in Cub's skills. I always have. I don't think there's been much of a fall off. He's just been fighting fucking killers, so he's picking up some losses naturally. If the cut goes okay, I'm going to say that his toughness, his poise, and specifically his boxing carry the day in a competitive fight. I think he obviously has to eat some kicks, but I'm going to say the boxing carries him. He lands some bigger shots, takes at least 2 of these rounds. Cub, Swanson, UD.
I think Cubs really got the edge, obviously, in experience here. And I think the one thing I love about Cub Swanson's game has always been his aggression. He's had measured aggression, I think, for a majority of his career. He's one of those guys that almost seems like he will play the game, right? He will strike with you. He will exchange with you. He will play that game. And boom, next thing you know, he's got some sort of a combination that he's firing out, that he's blitzing somebody with. And a lot of times it works for him. You know, if nothing else, it definitely gives him points, and it looks good in the judges to be backing people up, moving forward and keeping that distance. Martinez is a solid fighter. Martinez is, honestly, he's kind of a perfect matchup for Cub, stylistically anyway. I kind of hate having the young guys always thrown in with guys like this, like legends like this. But at the end of the day, Cub Swanson still wants to play the game, right? He still wants to climb the ladder. All these kids are all looking to do the same thing, so he's going to have to play with them as well. I think it's a really difficult fight on both sides. I don't know. Jonathan Martinez is younger than us. So I would imagine Jonathan Martinez grew up watching Cub Swanson kind of the way we did as well. So I don't know if he's going to have a little bit of shock when he goes in there. A lot of guys, when they get into some of these situations, they tend to be a lot more respectful inside of the cage than they really should be, because of the person they're fighting against. Example of that would be like Anderson Silva versus Israel Adesanya. You know what I mean? But I do think Cub is going to come away victorious here. I think he's just a little bit better, a little bit more seasoned in the right way. I think that his combinations, I think his combinations as well as his ability to defend, because I think defending here is going to play a big part, especially if he's checking kicks. As many kicks as Jonathan Martinez likes to throw, I promise you, you eat one of those on Cub Swanson's knee or on a wrong part of his shin, you won't see Jonathan Martinez kicking shit in that fight. So I think Cub Swanson is smart enough to make these kind of adjustments. I would hope that he is, especially with all the experience that he has behind him. I'm going to go with Cub Swanson by decision. I think this will be a really good fight, but I don't see either one of them finishing each other.
We agree. Mike goes the other way. He is going Jonathan Martinez by, he doesn't choose, KO TKO in round 2. One or the other.
This is very upsetting. This is very upsetting, Mike. I hope you hear this. This is very upsetting. All right. And now we get to our headliner. The 2 women kicking everything off in the end. Alexa Grasso versus Viviane Araujo. Alexa Grasso coming out of Mexico. I know you've heard us talk about her hands because her boxing is beautiful. Her last fight against Joanne Wood came at a win via submission, rear naked choke in round 1, which was a fantastic performance from her. And Viviane Araujo with a record of 11-3, coming off of a win decision against Andrea Lee. I would imagine Grasso would be the favorite here, but apparently, fuck me, so who knows?
You would be right this time.
Okay,
Grasso is minus 205. Viviane Araujo is plus 170. This is, while not the biggest main event on planet Earth, it is a big fight in this division. The winner, especially if it's Grasso, is going to be probably maybe one fight away from a title shot, if not even a title shot, depending on how things shake out around them. I like the matchup. I think it's intriguing. It's almost like technique versus physical force. I think it'll be kind of the higher level of skills possessed by Grasso versus the physicality and strength and relentlessness of Viviane Araujo. And honestly, that edge that Araujo has may be enough to swing it, despite her not being technically on the same level as Grasso when you really break it down. Because she leans on that physicality, and she makes it work for her. She showed it against Andrea Lee. She got absolutely outclassed and lit up in round one. And she was like, all right, I'm still here, though, and I'm just going to keep moving forward and drag you down. And she won the next 2 rounds of that fight and just was completely relentless. Can she do that to Grasso? I don't know. Grasso is deceptively strong. Her grappling does look like it's improving. She just won her last fight by submission for what that's worth. But she's going to have to deal with Araujo walking forward for 25 minutes, and she's going to have to lean on that striking. She obviously will have the advantage on the feet. Grasso will. But it's just a matter of her landing enough and landing hard enough to keep Araujo off of her. So I think it's that, and I think it's Grasso's defensive wrestling that end up determining this fight. If it's good enough, she's going to win, and maybe she's going to look really good. If she's stuffing a lot of takedowns, she's probably going to win this fight very clearly. If she's not stuffing many, this could get ugly, and Araujo could steal it. And this is another one where I'm kind of surprising myself. Like, on paper, when I saw this fight get made, I was like, oh, all right, Grasso probably wins, goes on to the next thing. My guess is, I haven't really looked, been a busy week. My guess is most of the world, internet-wise, Twitter, whatever, is on Grasso here. I think I'm going to go the contrarian route. I have never been totally sold on Grasso. If she's fighting a striker, I am. But when she's fighting someone that can grapple, I still am a bit concerned. And I think I'm going to say Araujo manages to make this thing ugly enough, drag it down enough times, control her enough, and wins it 48-47.
Yeah, I think this fight has been very close even from its inception. You know, even when you look at the numbers, right? Number 5, number 6. I mean, these girls are right there. Both of them have put on great performances against all the people that they fought. The problem I have with Araujo is a little bit of her resume as compared to Alexa Grasso. Just a smidge, right? Even in the losses that
it's fair.
Grasso has had, I hold some of those losses in higher regard than the losses that Araujo has had. And the wins that Araujo has had, I hold less so than the wins that Grasso has had. Again, I also really like Grasso's striking. I think Grasso's striking is very clean. Araujo, if we're going to compare one to the other, Grasso almost seems like a proper boxer, whereas Araujo seems more like a brawler. Yes. Somebody who's coming out to sort of Vanderlei their way to victory. Grasso is definitely the more, I would imagine, technical striker of the two. When it comes to the ground game, I think Grasso is still very green down there, but I think she's effective, right? I think she's decently effective on the ground. I think where it becomes a problem is, can she get back up? I don't think Araujo is going to be able to submit her. I don't think Araujo is going to be able to sun her on the ground. But at the same time, I don't think Grasso is going to be able to get up consistently if continuously taken down. I give her more chance to keep it standing up than I do to get back up if she's already on the ground. Her takedown defense, I think, is actually significantly better than people think that it is. I believe, what do they have right? I think I just saw this shit. Hang on a second. I don't know where it is, but I think I just saw that her takedown accuracy, if I'm not mistaken, was like 60%, and then her takedown defense was somewhere in that realm as well, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check that, because now that's just going to sound crazy if that's not the case. So yeah, her takedown accuracy is 57%, and her takedown defense is 60%. Granted, Araujo's takedown defense is 90%, but Araujo hasn't faced the same type of fighters that Grasso has faced. For 60% to have fought people like Tatiana Suarez and Carla Esparza, 60% is a motherfucking pass as far as I'm concerned, especially against Carla Esparza, because if Carla Esparza didn't shoot at least 10 takedowns in that fight, it wasn't a Carla Esparza fight. So good on her for having what she had against those, women like that. Obviously, she lost both of those fights, but I would imagine those fights have got to fuel you to get to that part of, get that part of your game tighter. And if nothing else, you got to give her credit for showing that she's growing. She's got a submission win under her belt. Granted, Wood is kind of at the tail end of what we would imagine is the tail end of her career. Things aren't going as what they used to have been back in her Invicta days and her early UFC days. But either way, Grasso has shown her improvement, no doubt. As long-winded as all that was, I'm going to go with Alexa Grasso, and I'm going to go with a decision win. I think she's able to squeak 2 wins out. I think she comes away with the first. Almost positive she comes away with the first. But I think, I think those adjustments, like you said, Araujo is going to try to make adjustments in the second round. And I think if Grasso is at least able to take the second round, not getting taken down, striking and countering, I think she'll end up with the second round as well. And subsequently, hopefully, at least one more after that and winning the decision.
Mike is in agreement. He's got Grasso by decision as well.
Nice.
All right, so we're different on the main event. I like it. What were we? Let's see. We both took Cub. We both took Askarov. Did we both take Jordan Wright? No, you took Dusko.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had some differences scattered throughout here. You took Assuncao. Yeah, we'll see next week.
Should be good. It's a great card when you really think about it. The order is a little odd, but some solid fights on there. Nothing of consequence, right? Like no one's lives will be changing this weekend, short of a tornado kick or something like that. But no one's lives are going to be changing this weekend, but should still be a solid night of fights for sure.
Yeah, it's weak name wise, but in terms of the matchups of the fights, it's actually really good. A lot of these fights could go either way.
Yeah.
All right, well, we did it. We did it without Mike. We have no trivia because Mike had the trivia, and then he didn't show up, so we didn't come up with anything. But, yeah, got through it.
Here we go. Boom.
Shout out to Mike one last time.
Yeah.
Thank you to everybody for listening.
For those of you still listening, go ahead and click on that subscribe button. Click on that bell. Watch us on YouTube. Never miss an episode. Let's go.
We'll be back next week to preview an enormous event. So do not miss next week.
Next week's probably going to be 2 hours, folks. So strap in for that one at least. Yeah. All right, guys.
It's too bad that this wasn't the off weekend, so that we didn't have to do any recaps and we could have just previewed that whole fucking Oliveira Islam card for the whole show. But we're gonna have to recap these babies. So
I can't wait to preview the Islam Charles fight. Not even the
card. I'm not
card.
gonna preview it. I'm just gonna say Islam is gonna die and Charles is the king of the world. And that's it. You're up.
I can't wait to break it down. I've been thinking about it so much. It's weird.
All right,
man.
Well,
cool.
That's it. Later, people. Thanks for listening.
All right, guys. Peace.
Peace.